Hey there everybody, it's markcrilley. I'm back with another how to draw video, except this is not really a how to draw video, it's a how to add shading video. Now, in order to teach shading, I need to have something to add shading to. So what I've done is taken this lizard pattern that was invented by the great artist M.C. Escher, and I've put the lines in place so that I can really devote the entire video to the shading process. And before I go any further, I want to point out that I banged up my hand. So a couple of days ago, so my apologies for the gruesome appearance of my hand. But let's go ahead and start doing some shading. Now I'm going to be holding the pencil very low to the page, as you can see here. This is something that I do when I want to get a sort of a base of shading. This is a Dixon Ticonderoga here. Not necessary that you get this exact pencil, but people do sort of want to know what materials I'm using. And the paper is a smooth surface Bristol board, which comes in pads of about, I think it's 20 sheets in a pad. And so anyway, holding the pencil very low to the page so as to expose quite a lot of the lead to the paper and get shading rather than lines. If you hold real close like this and try to do smooth shading, it's going to be tricky because you're getting the very point of the lead. When I'm trying to do shading like this, I don't want the point. I want almost the side of the lead. And I'm doing sort of circular motions. I'm not paying too much attention to the direction of the shading, really. My goal at this stage is just to make it quite smooth. Now, one thing that I should say is that this is not going to be a real-time video. There is going to be time-lapse, but what I'm hoping to do is sort of take you through each one of the steps in the process with some real-time, at the beginning before resorting to my good buddy Old Man Time-Lapse to help me keep this vid to a reasonable length. But I do feel, generally the shading process is the part of my videos that gets collapsed and sped through. I feel, in a way, the decisive moment with a video is, do you call it how to draw or not? Right? If I had called this video how to draw M.C. Escher's lizard pattern, then I would have felt obligated to start with a blank page and show you line by line how to get all these lines in the right place. And I would say, 80-90% of my how to draw videos are of that type because in the title it says how to draw. I feel like I need to show people the drawing part, which to me means the line placement, placing lines, that part of it. But the nice thing about doing a video like this is I can really just devote all the time to the shading, and in so doing, give you some sense of how long it takes. I mean, you can see that I'm not speeding through this. I'm trying my best, of course, to stay within the lines, just like they taught you back in kindergarten. But otherwise, I'm taking my time and trying to build up a kind of what I would call a mid-gray, probably heading towards pale gray. And my plan with each one of these lizards, there's 4 of them, is to have each one of them be a different shade of gray. And eventually what I want to head toward is to give the illusion of these being kind of puzzle pieces. I want to do my best to make them appear sort of three-dimensional. But to begin with, I'm just going in with this base layer of shading. Now, I am going to go ahead and finish up that arm there, but I thought what I'd do is show, if I've decided with this next one, as I have, to go darker, that I might just go ahead and go fairly dark right from the beginning. In fact, let's say that this second lizard is going to be the darkest of them all. Well, if I'm thinking about the shading process in advance, I feel like I can commit to a certain level of darkness, but I'm not 100% sure of the final shade of gray at this stage. So I'm going dark, but it's a little tentative. And that's kind of actually a piece of advice for you when you're doing shading. Rather than commit to the final color of your shading early on, you should probably get at least a kind of a base layer throughout the entire image, all of these lizards, so that I can sort of see what I'm heading toward, and that I'm gradually raising each one of the parts of the drawing to completion, more or less simultaneously. When I was younger, and I think this is common for a lot of kids, you're so fascinated by details, you're so eager to see the final work that you will just kind of complete bit by bit and take this part all the way to completion and then move on to the next part. That's a legitimate way of working, especially with photorealism. A lot of people will work that way. But I think maybe the traditional art teacher's advice is to try to extend your technique all the way across the whole surface, and bring it up little by little all at once, rather than try to complete one small part. Because what can happen is if I complete just this part first, and by the time I get down here, my technique may have changed a little, and there'll be an unevenness, or there could be. Especially if you become impatient. And by the end of it, you're not as interested in your own drawing anymore, and then little by little, it's getting messier. That's something that could happen. Anyway, that's probably enough for what I would call this first base layer of shading. I'm going to go ahead now and kick it into time-lapse so as to extend this layer of shading all the way across the 4 lizards. Then I'm going to come back and we'll talk about the next step in my process of refining things just a little. Alright, so I've got this base layer of shading in place, and I should say that I spent at least half an hour, I would say, on this part of the drawing. So let's see if we can keep track, at least loosely, in terms of how long it's taking me to complete this shading process. And you can see I'm trying to make this one the darkest, this the second, the third, and then the fourth. And the challenge will be to see if I can really differentiate these 4 different shades of gray. Now what I want to do is to refocus the camera a little so that you can see the details as I begin to refine things. Alright, so as I said, I want this to sort of have the appearance of puzzle pieces. So one of the first things I'm going to do is start refining or darkening in the line here that separates these lizards, and I guess I should say that I'm going to imagine a light source here, more or less coming from the top going down, maybe just shifting a little to the right, but I want the main shadow to be falling on the lower edge of most of these lines, and so I'm not going to darken in this upper line too much as I come along here, just sort of firming things up a little. Now, as I said, the right-hand side I might get a little darker as I begin to anticipate shadows that I'm going to be putting on that side. But you can see I've changed the way I'm holding my pencil now. I've brought my fingers way down near the tip so as to control things and to get a finer point on the line. I think as you become more experienced as an artist, you become aware of the angle of the tip of your drawing tool and the type of line that it's leading and sometimes leaving on the paper. And sometimes when I want the really sharpest, finest line, I'll actually go almost vertical with my pencil just to get the very, very tip. That's fairly rare though, because I find you lose a lot of control. Now, you can imagine that I will eventually go through and do, this work of the darkening in the lines more throughout the entire piece. But I think for now, one thing I want to begin to do is to start creating this illusion of these being puzzle pieces by putting in just a little bit of shade all along the, as I said, the sort of lower edge and then the right-hand side edge of various pieces. Now, at this point, interestingly, I'm not keeping it super low. I'm not going close to the tip. I'm sort of going in between those two, just about halfway up the pencil. And this is what feels comfortable to me. I don't want to say that it's going to be the way that everyone wants to use. But I guess I'm just trying to explain the things that I'm doing, instinctively, really, not without, I'm not like consciously saying, oh, time to switch to the other way of holding my pencil. No, these things you just, little by little, you start to pick up these habits, your ways of doing things. But anyway, what I'm going to be doing is adding just a sort of localized bit of shading near the edges, not going very far deep into the middle, because I want this to feel, like with a jigsaw puzzle, it's sort of mostly flat, but maybe we have this sense of a slightly curved edge. Beveled. I don't know if that's the right word. Beveled? They're beveling the edges of jigsaw puzzles these days? Crilly. Snap out of it. You've gone into your own imaginary world. I guess I just sort of feel like that'll look more like a three-dimensional piece if I limit my shading to just near the edges here. And in a way, what I'm going for is sometimes you see sculptures that are like carved into the wall. I think they call it bas relief. Looks like bas relief or BAS relief. And that's kind of what I'm going to be going for with this illustration, is I want to create a sense of three-dimensionality by not trying to make these lizards look super 3D, but rather to make them look like puzzle piece 3D, just very slightly raised off of the surface of the paper. So, maybe that tells you enough about what I'm doing for this process. And I guess what I could do is stop doing the shading here and move over to, say, this darker one to show you that I'm going to have to press down a bit more for this to show up. And in a way, this video becomes about contrast, which is nice because I don't think I've talked too much about contrast in my previous videos. The importance of having your darks be dark and your lights be light. When I was younger, I don't think I got my drawings to go dark enough. I know a lot of people have the opposite problem. They feel like their lines are too dark. So it's always one thing or another. Nobody's happy. Nobody's happy with the way they draw. But no, I guess I was happy. I thought that my drawings looked good, but then it was pointed out to me by art teachers that my drawings looked kind of washed out and tentative because I wasn't going for real deep darks there wasn't a range, there wasn't a wide enough range between the darkest part of the drawing and the lightest part of the drawing. Which is not to say that everybody in all circumstances wants to pursue that kind of a range, but certainly you want to be capable of achieving such a range when the drawing calls for it. So I think you got the basic idea of what I'm doing during this part, basically refining the separating lines between the two and then adding with slight circular motions a narrow bit of shading all along the lower and edge of things and the right-hand side of things. So let's go ahead and bring in Old Man Time-Lapse. Thank you, Old Man Time-Lapse. Oh, you're welcome. 'Twarn't nothing. And he is going to help me speed through this next part, and then we'll be back to even refine things yet further. All right, well, I thought I would pull back a little so that you could see the whole effect. But what we're going to do now is refocus the camera again so as to start to get into the details of their little claws here. All right, now one of the aspects of the original Escher pattern was to have each one of these claws divided into 3. And I guess I could have done that back at the beginning, but I thought I would hold off because the shading might have messed around a little with little details like that. So I'm going to go in and add the lines now, and possibly even add just little bits of micro shading, you know. I think what I've decided is that these are, you know, going to look like puzzle pieces, but have a certain three-dimensionality to them, especially this area of like the ridge that goes along the spine. Now, I should maybe say here that this is not an exact replica of Escher's pattern. I just thought that that would be kind of tedious and not very creative of me if I just absolutely recorded every single aspect of the original look of those lizards. I thought I would play around with things a little, just to make it more interesting for myself. But you can see even just adding those two little extra lines there, I think kind of helps, you know, makes it look more interesting. Now, another aspect to this that I've sort of created a challenge for myself a little bit, and that is, you know, very often when I'm shading something in with pencil, I'll go in with my finger to sort of blend things around and so forth. I've decided with this one that I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do any smearing of anything. This is all just going to be the tip of the pencil that's creating the shading. Now, the reason that I've decided to do this is that I'm trying to emulate the lithograph process that Escher used sometimes. I believe they use a sort of a lithographic crayon. I don't really know the full process, but I know when I look at those illustrations, it's not smooth, it's not all blended together. You see a certain very light grit to the surface, and so that's why you're not going to see me doing any smearing or blending of anything, except for the sort of natural blending that happens by way of the tip of the pencil. So yeah, you get the idea of what I'm doing here. Now, the eyes are looking a little spooky, and I was sort of toying around with how I might end up doing those. I thought I might even, toward the end, sort of blacken those in and make them look shiny, as if they had been inset with some sort of other material. But we will see if I go for that approach or not. But once again, I think it's time for me to go ahead and extend this, you know, the work that I've been doing on the claws all the way around. Now, at the same time, while I'm doing that, I think I'm also going to be working on the contrast. I feel like the contrast is not quite as dark as I want it to be, if this one indeed is supposed to be the darkest one. And like I said at the beginning, I kind of deliberately held off on going super dark, not knowing at that early phase in the process how dark I really needed to go. So a number of things you're going to see take place in this next stretch of the video, certainly doing all the details of the claws, but also trying to darken up the probably this one and this one especially need to go to a higher level of darkness. So let's go ahead and take care of all of that. Okay, well, I wanted to pause to sort of explain what I'm doing here. I'm adding a drop shadow using the black Prismacolor, blending it together with the Dixon Ticonderoga so as to have it very dark black near the edge of the puzzle piece and then fading just a little as it goes along. And I also wanted to point out I have been using like a scrap piece of paper sometimes to protect the drawing from smudging. That's a good simple thing that you can do. See, I'm just, instead of putting my hand right on the art, put it on this piece of paper, and that's going to help me you know, save me from the misery of smearing all over the work. That, and you can see it's pretty painstaking stuff. 12 noon, actually, as I work on this. I'd started at 9, so about 3 hours I've put into this so far. And we're getting pretty close to the end because, you know what? and try not to fall off your chairs when you hear me say this, but I've decided not to use any white gouache. The scandal of the century. On this illustration, I think just in keeping with this idea of a purist approach, let's make it just the Dixon Ticonderoga and just a touch, really, of the black Prismacolor. So you can kind of see what I'm doing. Again, always getting this white piece of scrap paper in here to protect the illustration. Going in, using the black Prismacolor to just deepen the darkness, provide that extra bit of contrast. But otherwise, I would say the heavy lifting in this illustration was all the humble Dixon Ticonderoga. You don't have to have loads of super expensive, fancy materials to do good artwork, folks. Really just pencil and paper and a whole lot of patience is what it takes. So let's go ahead and kick it into time-lapse one final time. You're going to see me really go through and apply this technique that you saw me do just a little here in real time throughout the entire piece, and then we'll be back with a few final words. Well, there's my shading video. No gouache used in this one, though some of you probably noticed that I was using my eraser to erase away and leave just a little lighter area in the upper right-hand side, in contrast to the lower left where all the shadows went. That ended up being a pretty important part of the three-dimensional effect. Let me know what you thought of this video. I can certainly do more videos like this that focus on the shading. Indeed, this is just one type of shading. I certainly don't want you to think that I believe this, every drawing should be completed with this one particular type. No, just an example. And I do indeed hope that many of you will find this type of video helpful. But in the meantime, let me go ahead and thank anyone who has supported me by getting any of my books like Brody's Ghost and Miki Falls, my 2 graphic novel series, as well as the Realism Challenge. This one sort of fits in with today's topic, going for a kind of hyper-realistic look. And then, of course, Mastering Manga and Mastering Manga 2, my How to Draw books. Always super appreciative of those who help me out by ordering any of those books as I knock the pencils away. Clearly time for me to lay down this pencil. Thanks so much for watching this video, friends. I hope you had a good time. I know I did. And I'll be back with another one real soon.